Well, hello and welcome everyone to today's session created specifically for retail businesses around getting through this crisis and, just as importantly, flourishing afterwards. We'll explore and share with you some of the hidden opportunities that we've identified to help you do just that. It's been 3 weeks since our very first webinar on a similar topic to this one, but much more broad. Today we're focusing squarely in on retail. If you'd like to see the general one, you can go to Google and type Add China YouTube, and it should be one of the very first results. Just please wait until this one's finished, as we've got the latest and greatest information for you right here. We'll share with you some updates, information, and data. Julia's role at Add China is consulting with businesses to develop their marketing strategy and go-to-market plan for entering China. She's also lived through the coronavirus response in China from the very start. Then it's my turn. I'm Brad, and I'll go into detail on both general retail trends and developments and a few specific sectors within retail. Essentially, I research and create educational content around the tech tools and innovations in the world of Chinese advertising. Towards the end of today's session, you'll be joined by Henrik, serial entrepreneur and China marketing expert, who's been through Corona from the start in Shanghai. Joining Henrik will be Jay, our CEO and co-founder. Jay has extensive experience across Europe and Asia, building and developing international teams of businesses. Be sure to ask your questions in the chat so we can respond to those at the end of today's session. Just to explain who we are and what we do at Add China.io, at the heart of it, we help international organizations and brands advertise and sell into China. So let's get into it. Today, we'll explore 3 key ideas. The first is how China suffered in being taken essentially offline for over 2 months. Now they're bouncing back after going through that tough situation. Secondly, you'll find out potential opportunities that exist during this uncertain time. And thirdly, see why those opportunities could help you get through this crisis and out the other side. So with that out of the way, I'd like to hand it over to Julia. And Julia will take a big picture look at retail in China, including what's happened over the last few months and how things are looking now. Over to you, Julia.
Everyone, my name is Julia, and I'm the project manager in Go Digital China. And last time in the webinar, I talked about how China has gone through the coronavirus epidemic and how people's life being impacted and how the Chinese people's attitudes towards life in the future. And today, I will first go through different data and the changes in regarding the retail sales and the retail channels, and also the customer behaviors, and then give you a summary of how the new normal would be look like in the post-COVID-19 period from the marketing's perspective. First, let's have a look at the year-on-year change in the retail sales revenue in China by the product category from December 2019 and March 2020. In the picture in the right side, you can see the blue color represent the sales revenue in December 2019, when the coronavirus has yet become a epidemic in China at that time. So it basically indicates how the situation looks like during the normal time. And the gray colors and is for March in this year, and the black color is for January and February of this year. These two colors basically represent the coronavirus outbreak period in China. And we see for most of these categories, there is a big drop in the retail sales revenues since January. But we see that the situation in March improved a lot as comparing to that in January and February, indicating that in general, the consumers are spending more gradually and the retail industry is already on the way of recovering. Also, we see among all these categories, the food and the beverage industry and also the medicine industries are seeing a very, very strong growth during the coronavirus period. This is due to that people are cooking for themselves more often due to the various restrictions in place during the epidemic, especially the instant food or the semi-processed food, which is easy to cook. And also the drinking and beverage become extremely popular during the period. And for the other categories in general, we think the more suffered during the epidemic, the more time that they will take to get back into the normal situation. But here we should take into consideration is the trend before the epidemic. For example, the catering industry in the bottom in this graph, even it's got the most serious hit, but it shows a higher growth rate before the crisis. So once the situation is under control, I believe this industry will be quickly get recovered in the next few months. And in this page, we will have a look at how different channels contribute to the sales in January and February. The numbers in the bottom shows the sales revenue contribute from different sales channels. And above the channel's name, the numbers in the purple and blue colors are their corresponding growth rate. There's only one channel in the right side, in the orange color is the e-commerce channels. This is the only online channel, and the rest of the other channels are all offline channels. And we see that the offline channels combined has a negative 4.2 growth rate, whereas the online channels enjoyed almost 30% growth rate during the epidemic. But here, it should be noted that the increased tendency towards the online shopping is not only because of the COVID-19. Part of the continued rise is driven by the increasing online penetrations in China's lower tier cities, for example, the tier 3 and the tier 4 cities, where the middle class have a greater access to online retailers. And also some other reasons, for example, mobile shopping has developed very rapidly in the recent year. And also the Chinese retailers keep investing heavily in the omni-channel capabilities. But the coronavirus situation on the ground in Hubei province and throughout China did have accelerated the adoption of digital sales. The outbreak forced someone who might previously used to visit the local store for groceries, medicines, electronics, or even cars. They are now turning to online resources. And if the e-commerce experience proved to be good enough, then there's nothing stopping that person from continue to leverage those easy used technologies to acquire those necessary goods once more in the future, especially when the Chinese platforms investing heavily to improve the pleasant online shopping experience, which is designed to retain the users. So here we can conclude that setting operations online has already been a matter of survival. Now let's have a look at the consumers by comparing the consumer's typical day before and during the crisis to find out what have been changed in consumers' daily habits, their consumption patterns, and also their ways of thinking. Before the coronavirus, consumers utilized mature online to offline service to make their lives more refined and convenient. They use mobile terminals to switch between different online and offline scenarios. And during the outbreak, consumers are forced to spend more time on online work and online education platforms. The consumers have to start to rely on doing most of their daily work and tasks through the mobile phones. The epidemic has pushed consumers into a new generation of the mobile internet. It is common observation that users are staying online and involved in deep digitalization, but moreover, they are getting involved to the next level. This may be something we need to pay attention to. Users are getting more sophisticated on their competence in, for example, attention distribution, the channel switching, group bargaining, demand release, and also the interactions. In particular, one effect of the impact of the epidemic has pushed consumers to shift in the consumer journey. In the past, most of the consumptions are basically happened either in the physical store or those platform-based e-commerce. But now, since consumers have been lifted into a next level, they can switch between different channels, such as the, for example, integrated e-commerce platform, the social medias, vertical integrated platforms, official websites or WeChat accounts, group bargaining, online streaming, and also the private traffic. So in the past, maybe a mini program or app could have been sufficient, but it's no longer the case now. Now the surveys have been evolved and expanded to, for example, the WeChat Moments, the WeChat Mini Program, for Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, and the e-commerce platforms, physical stores, live streaming, and many, many more. So in order to reach out to a wider group of the potential users, the brands and companies have to use multimedia and multiple channels. And in the recent years, maybe you have heard of this term called new normal for several times, either for describing the situation after the US and China trade war, or like now for describing the life changes in post-COVID-19 epidemic. Here I will share some insights about the new normal from the marketing's perspective to give you some idea of what should have been taken into consideration when you're thinking of developing the Chinese market. First is the product preference. During the epidemic, consumers have developed more interest in those healthy and safety products, especially something good for improving their immune system products. This interest will much likely to continue for some time and to a higher degree after the outbreak ends. Here we have a clients in Norway. They are in the health supplement industry, and their products are especially good for improve the immune system. So they have enjoyed a very strong sales in March and April in China this year. I think this is a very good example to prove this trend. And also, there might be some differences in the consumer's purchase behavior. We see a noticeable split among the current customers in China. One industry survey has shown that some of the Chinese consumers are they do spend significantly, but on the other hand, around 40% of the consumers are being cautious with the spending due to the direct or indirect effect of the slowing economy. So for those group of customers, making good value is very important for them. The brand attitude. Well-known brands have some advantage during the epidemic, but the online wars still remains the key to the victory. Brands that already have quite strong online presence before the crisis, including many fashions and cosmetic brands, have been rewarded with plenty of new online opportunities. However, the Chinese consumers are actually more open and willing to try some less well-known and new brands with strong online foundations as well. A lot of new emerging brands are listed on the top during the shopping festivals in the recent period. And the last is about the social responsibilities. During the outbreak period, we see that brands and companies that have displayed a good sense of social responsibilities actually enjoyed a big lift in reputation. And I believe that they have gained a good word of mouth for the future's growth. In the channel's perspective, as I said previously, there's a substantial shift from offline to online during the epidemic. But moreover, consumers are not only staying in one or two single e-commerce channels. Instead, because of the crisis, they have more leisure time, so they can become more willing to explore different types of retail touchpoints. The crisis has brought plenty of traffic to those already dominant integrated e-commerce platforms such as Tmall or JD or Pinduoduo. Also, but some new and emerging social media or vertical platforms, as well as the brand official accounts or mini programs, have also attracted a lot of attentions. In general, we think it is naturally that the consumers will start back to the physical shopping experience once the epidemic situation got controlled. However, we believe many of their online habits that developed during the period will remain and flow naturally into the consumer's omni-channel shopping experience in the future. So this will raise new requirements for the communications and in the communications and the marketing side. The rapid move from offline to online has also shifted ground in the communications. There are many new and innovative methods are emerging and gets more popular in China recently. Currently, we see the most popular and favorite methods are live streaming, professional and niche KOLs. Brands use live streaming to promote the cosmetics, foods, cards, consumer electronics, health products, and even the realistic. But on the other hand, for those offline stores, we think you will have to proactively use more private approach for communication, such as the community-based purchase to cultivate online to offline surveys to retain the customers. In the future, no matter online or offline, the business need to work harder to embrace the multi-channel integration trend. So these are some of the new trends that we believe will happen in the post-COVID-19 times. In the next session, my colleague Brad will dig further into specific industries and see what's the opportunities there in the retail side. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, for that exploration into the big picture shifts and changes in retail. Now I'd like to jump into the nitty-gritty of the recovery and then dive into the details as far as different sectors in retail are concerned. So this snapshot you see here of data comes from G7 Internet of Things, which is China's largest fleet management system. About 10 out of every 11 large logistics and distribution companies use G7 to provide the tracking data to manage their fleets. So they collect an unreal amount of data. There's almost 1 million vehicles across China. So this virus hit pretty hard and fast from mid-January, as you can see, effectively killing the transport of goods. Hubei province is where this outbreak began, in its capital of Wuhan, and Wuhan is essentially China's major hub due to its central location. If goods are moving across the country, it's almost certain that they'll pass through Wuhan. About 5 weeks ago, things started to slowly improve, and as of last week, the transport is almost back to normal, pre-virus levels. So all over the country, into Hubei province was sitting around 80%, and all over Hubei into the city of Wuhan was about 95%. And now those numbers are sure to have increased further since they were last updated a week ago. And final point here, bear in mind, this is the worst hit province in China. Everywhere else experienced a much lower rate of infection and therefore much less disruption as a result of that. Continuing to focus on China's improvement, we've seen online stories and even experienced ourselves a massive increase in demand for fitness, health, luxury, and general retail goods. E-commerce sales are way up in March and April, which is of course great because that just shows how much things are getting better. Retail sales are moving online at a rapid rate with logistics and shipping companies running very close to normal. And I'll share some examples with you shortly. And those who are here with us live will see more of that later today in the PDF after this session ends. So I'd just like to draw your attention to these graphs and graphics. About 40% of consumers have increased their frequency of buying online. And there's been a massive surge in first-time users, just highlighting this upswing in online shopping and positive consumer sentiment, which retail businesses should definitely find exciting. Most of China's back to work, with almost every province at 95 to 100% reopened. So while China was very connected before the virus, there's a lot of people who were forced to adjust to online shopping as well. So you have this huge population that's used to it, and a new population that have just discovered online shopping, and it's a bit novel to them, but they've expanded this online shopping base in China quite considerably. And as a way of cashing in on this driving growth, influencers on social media are doing these live streams to showcase certain products. And this is a practice that has been popular for a while in China, but it's becoming more of a natural part of paid advertising promotion. And there's also been a kind of post-corona boom as well to help stimulate sales and growth. Before diving deeper into a few specifics, I wanted to talk about some of the more general retail opportunities. China is in a uniquely strong position compared to other world markets, and there are valid reasons for that. China has been the largest consumer market since 2015. Since overtaking the US, it's continued to grow and increase that lead. The speed at which it's emerged after this virus, compared with the speed the rest of the world is likely to come out, it'll serve to expand that gap even further still. So part of this growth is just because it's never been easier to sell into China than it is today. While many countries have locked down passenger travel to and from various regions, there's no embargo on the flow of physical goods. China is also investing heavily in their economy during this time, relaxing some of their regulations, creating additional economic zones to encourage more trade, and implementing other policies to spur growth. This is going on while globally the situation appears to get worse and worse. Many experts are anticipating that other world markets will continue to struggle with this virus for 6 months, 12 months, perhaps even longer. Yet right now we have a huge market accustomed to buying online, and with a recent substantial growth in the amount of people who are buying online on top of that. eMarketer, which is an organization that watches and reports on marketing trends, anticipates traditional ad spend to fall off, while digital ad spend will increase by 13% this year. So right now, 2 out of every 3 ads in China are already digital. A 13% increase will take that to above 3 out of every 4 ads. China coming back online just offers a great deal of opportunities, as you can see here. These graphs are a snapshot of signups we've received over the last few weeks, showing the range of interest in China from different sectors of retail. As you can see here, some sectors are more interested than others, but there's a very broad range of organizations reaching out to us. What this highlights is a raising awareness from quite literally all over the world. There's strong rising interest in China. If you're not already thinking about this, well, now's the time, because lots of others are. The point I want to make here is while brands and businesses are still in panic mode, a lot have their eyes open looking for those opportunities to seize to get ahead. And while you can't fly, your products can fly, and they can still get to their destinations. For now, we'll take a closer look at a few different sectors, and later today you'll receive the PDF with examples from other organizations. If you're curious to learn more about your industry that we don't cover here, or if you'd just like more information, feel free to get in touch with us at the end of today's session. So within the luxury sector, several brands actually launched online in China during March. Companies have moved very quickly to get online with retail and commerce platforms to get those set up, or partner with existing ones so that they could make sales in the short term, but even more importantly, to get set up for the recovery and the long term ahead. In the West, where savings rates are low and debt levels are very high, things will likely be quite tough for quite some time. In stark contrast, China has one of the highest savings rates in the world, making it an ideal option for continuing sales in big-ticket items. Just an anecdotal post that highlights this. Sean Rain, who is a China marketing researcher, went out over the weekend and commented on how packed the Apple store was in China. He saw the lines snaking out of Chanel, and with signs pointing to this being the start of a boom period in China. And if you take a look at the images at the bottom of that screenshot there, you can see that he's got that evidence to back up what he saw, that there's growing foot traffic in physical stores as well in China. Lots of consumer sentiment studies indicated that people in China wanted to live healthier post-coronavirus, and that's starting to now reflect in early data that's trickling through. Demand for healthy, nutritious, and green foods are rising as people want to improve their health and take care of their bodies. But a key difference between China and the West is that Chinese brands are very strong. There's a lot of effort put into making people feel a certain way. They're very adept at making their target market feel understood and reinforce their identity. In the West, many luxury brands achieve this. In China, it's moved beyond the luxury sector. Brands that can elicit sensory experiences tap into something very powerful that drives Chinese consumers. Interestingly, early indicators appear that while the Chinese people are more health conscious post-corona, their shift towards consuming more alcohol has not been disrupted. It will be interesting to see how that changes, or whether it changes, over the long term. Tying in with the food and beverage is also the fitness-related side of things. The renewed interest and commitment to physical health has increased sales across fitness trackers, activewear, and gym-related gear. On a similar note, other health products are also becoming more popular too. Just to illustrate two of those, I'd like to share two stories with you about two different brands in the health and fitness sector. The first is a supplement company that sells protein and creatine powder for people who want to get in shape. They've recently increased their efforts in China after a period of stagnation during the lockdown. With gyms reopening across China and many people now more conscious about taking their health seriously, this company has found a solution that lets them keep selling despite underperforming home markets and traditional foreign markets. What makes this especially impressive is that they're selling a physical product through a physical supply chain for a physical activity. That's about the worst combination imaginable right now, and yet creative thinking and adapting their business model allowed them to distribute and continue making sales during this window of opportunity. To stick with the outdoor theme, a company that sells activewear into Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Germany, although were happy in their home markets, although they kind of kicked around the idea of China loosely, but they were content in their European market, so they didn't take action. And after experiencing a sharp decline in sales in their home markets, despite planning for a big season and stocking up on inventory, they made the adjustment and are launching into China, and they're now diving into a new market. But at least it's one with greater potential than their traditional markets for the foreseeable future. For some extra examples of retail brands, both big name and small, keep an eye out for that PDF that live attendees will receive in about 2 hours' time. And on the e-commerce side of things, we see China opening up new economic zones with less onerous regulations to try and spur growth. We see more work in the favor of exporters rather than importers. Some of those in the favor of exporters, some of those in the favor of importers. And as always, when you're working with the government, it takes a bit of time and research to disentangle everything. But the takeaway is that China's opening up and improving the situation when it comes to international trade. In related news, e-commerce sales have jumped way up after the January and February slump. April numbers are set to be even higher again, following those sharp declines in the first quarter. In particular, one major draw card that is attracting sellers into China now is the upcoming shopping holidays. It's true that China has a lot, but a lot of these are contained across the next couple of coming months, serving as a very appealing draw card. You can see those at the bottom of that screen there. In this chart here, you can see the biggest areas of growth in terms of sales over the last few months. The biggest gains have been seen on e-commerce platforms, yet now things are opening. Shopping malls and department stores are experiencing significantly increased foot traffic, and a great deal of that's converting into sales. Now on the graph on the left side here, this is more up to date. So if you're wondering why there's a discrepancy between the one on the right around hypermarkets, the graph on the right is actually a snapshot from an early week in February, right in the middle of the pandemic. So that's showing the things that were up and down in that period. And the graph on the right is more over a longer term and up to date as of a few days ago. And now that many places have reopened, a lot's changed in terms of what's performing well over at that longer period of time. One quote that I wanted to draw your attention to from Inside Retail Asia is that online retail has experienced a major boost as Chinese consumers on lockdown have recommended products to friends and others in close proximity. JD, which is a major online e-commerce platform in China, their sales for the first quarter of this year exceed that of the entirety of last year. And that's really quite huge. I'd like to share with you now a few words of wisdom from David Ogilvy, known best as the father of advertising. Studies of the last 6 recessions have demonstrated that companies which do not cut back their advertising budgets achieve greater increases in profit than companies which do cut back. And I think that's extremely relevant to the situation we're facing right now. It highlights the importance of keeping the pedal down through the hard times, which allows you to come out on top in the good times. Of course, you need to be smart with your money, but the logic is that advertising should not be cut back when times are hard, any more than you'd cut back any other essential ingredient in your product or service. To continue with why China is such a great place for retail right now, the barriers to enter China are still really low with cross-border e-commerce. You don't need a Chinese entity to do business. You also don't need to set up your own logistics entirely on your own. And if your website loads in China, you can start selling today on your current website, or you can get one set up. If you're interested in China but not sure whether your website loads, we'll show you where to contact us at the end and we can test that for you. It can be quite swift to set up a point of sale in China as well, and we can point you in the right direction for how to do that too. With advertising technology like adchina.io, advertising in China is now easy. We've made it similar to advertising on Facebook or Google. And as consumption shifts more and more online, with influencers spruiking products on streaming platforms, a DIY approach is more achievable and physical distribution in stores is becoming slowly less relevant. Just to touch on a few points for why now is a good time for China. 3 weeks ago, we mentioned that there is light at the end of the tunnel and that there are opportunities to take advantage of. And as time's gone by, that's shown to have been the case. And the opportunity is that logically and with reason, there's now more data and more information to show why now is a great time for China. It's one thing to say what the opportunities are. It's another thing entirely to see that there's sense and logic behind them. China's role has shifted into becoming a world-driving market, and we perceive this crisis will position China even further ahead. So much so that it's likely that the companies that leverage China to stay afloat through the next 12 months, or however long this lasts, they will be in a position where they can emerge successfully from the crisis, while their competitors are forced to either close, struggle, or go into debt. With China doing better now, there's a chance to jump on and ride that wave. I'd like to leave you with some of the upside and opportunities to why China could not only be a lifeline for your business, but something even more in the future. While China is still facing challenges, China's really coming back, giving international companies who are facing struggles in their home markets this opportunity to potentially survive and thrive. The world will take time to get back on their feet, but investing in China now may get you into a nice position, because China will be a core market and source of growth well into the future. There will also be lots of adjustments made as we acclimatize to the new normal, Julia mentioned, when the world comes out the other side of this pandemic. So now's a smart time to get set up. Whichever route you take, I wish you the very best as we go through these difficult but exciting times together. With that, I'd like to introduce you to Jay and Henrik for the Q&A. If you haven't already, be sure to add your questions in the chat now. Over to you. Thank Henrik and Jay.
And thank you very much, Julia. So like Brad said, feel free to continue asking us questions in the chat while we start making our way through the ones already submitted. So the first question here, let's see. So Jay, what are the best retail channels for selling in China right now?
That's a very hard question, actually. The good thing about, and also challenging thing about the Chinese market when it comes to e-commerce is that it is so developed and so sophisticated. Julia had a very good slide on this one. If you look at the ecosystem of e-commerce in China, you will be surprised to see that so many different ways are happening in China, and so many different channels are available in China as well. But at the same time, they are very dynamic. Many of them are, most of them are working for different products and different brands. So my suggestion is that, of course, not only my suggestion, I think this is a general guideline where we talk to our customers. We would like them to start small and scale smart. So don't let's say spend let's say months or years to find out which one to start with. I think there are plenty of options out there. What you should do is actually pick the one that is pick one. Just start with one. Easy choice and start and test it out. At the same time, when the market is much more in a way penetrated by your product and by your brand, you should consider to have multi-channel sales point of sale as well. There was a very good example, a very good slide from Brad as well, talking about Tmall, for example, opening up for different brands. I think the latest news is that Tesla just opened up their flagship store on Tmall as well. Yeah, the thing about the digital marketing and also about e-commerce is about exploration. It's about testing new channels. It's about with a very efficient way. That is what I would suggest. I wouldn't at this moment, let's say, recommend you to look into one of those, or let's say any one of those channels, but to start fast. And then, of course, we do have some experience in the sales channels as well. We don't do this. We don't operate these stores, but we can recommend you with some partners that we have been working with. And yeah, we basically work with all the e-commerce platforms in China anyway. Yeah.
So
feel free to contact us.
Is whether we can share a bit more, if we have any examples of how a clothing brand can get set up in China.
Yeah, I think clothing in general is a let's say a more demanding industry or sector when it comes to e-commerce, because of the sizes, because of the returns and changes and so on. Even this Double 11 shopping festival in China every year, they have a lot of return and change and exchanges afterwards as well. But again, but these are not new. These are not new to any clothing brand that are already selling online in their home market or in their neighboring market or other markets in the world except China. So when you go into Chinese market, you will face the same thing. So don't really worry about that one. What the common process would be, of course, you do a market analysis or a research and see if there is a market fit or potential market fit. What is good about Chinese market is that every segment or every niche is big enough. That's a good thing. And then the challenge is to reach them, to locate them and reach them. And that's where the digital marketing, targeted digital marketing kicks in. Second step would be, establish your point of sale. It can be your website, existing web store, as long as it loads, as long as in China, as long as the performance in China is good. We can do the testing for you. You can do it yourself. There are tools online as well to test your accessibility of your website and online store in China, inside the wall, basically. And then, of course, again, we recommend to start small. Set up a advertising account on our platform and run some small campaigns towards some presumed customer segments, targeted audience, and see the response to the product, to the packaging, to the colors, to the sizes, to the price point, to the messages that you are delivering. And then find out more about the market instead of doing kind of a survey, because you are basically surveying by selling, and that's a good way of doing it. And then run a few orders and see if your existing logistics solution fits in. If they don't, then find some. Let's explore some new alternatives. If they do, then keep it until the orders are too many to handle, and you need to streamline operations so that you can make the sales process more efficient. And then, of course, that's basically a scaling project.
So this actually it leads well into another question here, because you touched on that briefly. So it's around logistics. So I understand that is something a lot of retailers, it's a very important part of their life. So how do the logistics of selling in China work, and whether is it easy getting set up?
When you go into Chinese markets, I think many of our customers, many of the brands have been surprised by the efficiency and the possibilities that Chinese logistic infrastructure is providing. That's really something you shouldn't worry about, because in China, for example, JD.com, most of their products can be delivered within 24 or 36 hours across China. And remember, China is a big country, so domestic logistics in China is not a big deal. What you have to look into more is a good way of setting up international part, so that it's efficient when it comes to cost effective, and also so that it's actually giving your customers a good experience when it comes to tracking and waiting time and so on. There are also, again, plenty of well-established international logistic vendors that you can choose from. So start with your existing ones and see if they can do it for you. From our experience, I mean, the international e-commerce shopping experience is much better in China compared to here, for example, in Europe. It's
yeah, just on this one, having been here through the whole COVID-19, I mean, we were isolated inside for, I think I went out twice in more than 60 days here in Shanghai. And we didn't have to go to the store once. You know, we could just order all our food, could even do some shopping. You know, I bought a set of dumbbells just because I had to do something inside. So even through the crisis, we're still able, like the logistics system still worked. As you saw in Brad's slide, of course, it was a little bit different in Hubei, where it got more locked down. But yeah, in general, the logistics system is very good in China. And one thing I also want to say there is that the way it can work for foreign retailers is, you know, you can send it directly, but you can also work with, for example, one of the bigger retailers. They have warehouses in China, and some are bonded, some meaning that you can get the goods sent in and you don't need to pay any import tax before you actually sell the goods, and it gets sent out of the warehouse. So I don't think we will go into too much detail here. Hopefully that answered you know, some of the question, but it's more, you know, because this isn't what we work on primarily, but it's just to give some insight and maybe help move that search forward as well.
Yeah. And also, of course, we have partners that we can recommend to you to talk to when it comes to specific solutions, if you don't have any, of course.
So another question very related to retail here. So how does customer service work for international retailers looking to enter China for the first time? I think it's a very good one.
Yes, that's a very good one. Yes, definitely. Customer service is always a challenge. Definitely, especially when you go into a market that consumers don't speak your language. That's a challenge that you have to face if you go into, for example, a French market. What I would suggest again, try not to worry about these kind of happy problems. If you have a lot of inquiries, if you have a lot of, let's say, people wondering how to use it after they bought it, then that's a problem that is not that hard to solve. Again, there are plenty of the so-called technical partners in China, which help you with the operation of your web store. Let's say answering questions on from the consumers, handling the complaints from the consumers as well. There are plenty of these kind of players around those big e-commerce platforms. So the challenge actually would probably be how to select them afterwards, and also according to their quality and cost and so on. So, but there are plenty of them. Don't worry about that at this moment. From my point of view, you want to go into the market first and then solve the problems later, instead of worry too much about the problems when the business becomes big.
But I think just a thing to add on there as well is then that this again comes down to our perspective or our suggestion, which is that going into China, I think it's that it used to be such a big thing. It used to be, millions invested, in a do or die kind of effort, but it's changed a lot over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Now you can get up and running with a point of sale, start driving traffic, get your first customers, and you can do it for depending on product and things like that, it's, you can probably do it for less than 50,000 US, just to pull a number out. It depends. It can, in certain cases, can be a lot less as well. The point is that you can start very easy, for example, with your current point of sale, if it loads, and then then start selling. For example, like we've had several cases where brands come to us and they say, well, we have Chinese people buying from our international page. We're wondering, maybe we should explore China more. Because they see like their product is already being pulled into China. And then we have good success with then making it easier for them to buy, to ratchet up on marketing and things like that. So it's definitely a challenge that needs to be solved, but there's a lot of opportunities to solve that. For some, it can also just be to, in the beginning, it could even be done by reaching out to a partner or something that can speak Chinese, and help with the first orders. And then take it from there, because in the beginning it's usually not a big problem if you start small and build stone on stone.
Yeah, I think what has changed since we entered into the market is mainly on the marketing side, on the digital marketing side. In the past, it has been very difficult to launch small campaigns, to run this kind of Western, in a way, a little bit Western entrepreneurial projects to explore Chinese market without a big investment. From our point of view, reaching again, because of the size of Chinese market, because of the good consuming power in China, every segment, every niche is big enough for a random company. So what is where the challenge is how to find the right audience, how to find the right audience in an efficient way. I think that's the most important thing. Don't worry about the maturity of the e-commerce ecosystem in China. That is very mature. I mean, that's probably the most mature ecosystem in China to support the e-commerce model compared to any other countries in the world. So so I think try to start just as you enter any Western market. That's what we're trying to achieve.
So then,
at China.io.
I think we have time for one more question if anyone wants to ask another one in the chat. But I also want to ask one here. So there is a lot of comments online now around whether China's economy, is it still recovering? Is it recovered? Is it booming? And there is so much, I guess countries have so much at stake here for different reasons that there is a lot of propaganda being thrown out every which way. Some are saying it's all fake. Some are saying it's the best ever. Jay, what's your comment on the return to a normal versus booming or still recovering?
First of all, we focus this webinar on the business side, so I will focus on the business side. When it comes to business, I think first of all, we have been closely watching the situation since December last year. When actually things are starting to come out and people start to talk about it, and we have observed that our observation and also a little bit, to be honest, prediction of what's going to happen have actually happened so far. If you go back to see to watch the previous webinar that we made in, I think, 3 weeks ago. What we talked about there actually happened now, and then also, I mean, before as well. We have been in this business for I mean, we have been watching this transition for quite some time. What we are trying to say is that China is definitely in the process of recovering, and it's really is happening rapidly. I mean, we have our people on the ground, including you, experiencing every day what's happening on the street and in the economy, and we can feel it, and we also have the data supporting it as well. What we want to say is that we can see that in East Asia there are several countries that manage to control the epidemic in a kind of a swift way, including China. China is only one of them. So several of them will be able to come out of the impact much earlier than the rest of the world. Like it or not, we are going to use those markets as the global economic engine for the next 6 to 18 months. And they are going to contribute a lot when it comes to consumption, when it comes to investment, and so on. And this is the right time to really explore that market if you really want to recover together with them and ride on that tide. Again, rest of the world will also recover, but then at a later stage. During this period, it's all about the survival and also thriving afterwards. It's a good timing, good opportunity to position yourself in one of the biggest, largest consumer market in the world, if not largest one. So use this as an opportunity instead of a mitigation. It's an opportunity. Also after the
one thing I'd like to add here is, having been here through it, I basically landed in China on the 22nd of February, and then I think it was the day after they closed Wuhan. So I've really been able to experience this whole period from China. But the thing is, now in Shanghai, we've started going out again. On Friday, my wife and I went downtown, met with one of her friends, having hot pot, drinking, just having a normal trip to a restaurant, and the restaurant is packed, but there's not the fear around it because of how well China is controlling the flow in and out of both cities, in and out of the country, and we actually in the coming weekend we even have a family gathering planned. All the family gatherings were cancelled for Chinese New Year, but now that things are really returning to normal here, we're actually meeting up with the extended family next Saturday, which is definitely a sign that things are less fearful. So I think, we have a couple of minutes left. So I think the last question we'll take here is, how does mini programs work? I'm guessing that is related to WeChat Mini Programs. Jake?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably WeChat Mini Program, but at the same time, actually, many others are pushing out their own mini programs now. It's very, very interesting thing to observe. This is one thing that we're excited about Chinese market all the time. New things always pop out, so it's very good. So mini program has been around for several years now. Actually, they managed to become a very important part of WeChat ecosystem, and it can be a very efficient way, but it's built for a WeChat ecosystem so that it can be easily spreaded among the users, the WeChat users. The good thing about it is that you can do it with almost everything. About every different functions. When you're trying to use it for retail, it's probably going to be a point of sale, a touch point with the existing customers. When there is a point, as they say, customer support, and so on. And also, you want to use it as a landing place when you launch WeChat related campaigns. So nowadays, WeChat Mini Program is not that expensive to develop anymore. There are plenty of templates out there. There are plenty of companies building mini programs for customers, and also some for foreign consumers, foreign brands as well. So I think it's definitely one viable option for any brand to go into markets, go into Chinese market to consider, on top of the others, of course. Doesn't have to, and actually you don't really have to start with others. You can actually start. We have customers actually start with WeChat Mini Program as their first point of sale in China. So it's not that big investment. But then remember that it's not very open tool to the other channels. It's very much WeChat related. I mean, that's the purpose of WeChat as well, trying to realize everything within one big app, which is WeChat. So when you go into that one, remember that you are going into one channel. But then our belief is multi-channel, especially on the marketing side. We want to reach out to the customers' audience via multi-channels and compare the difference.
But this is also, you know, I know we're now very much at the tail end here, but just want to say this as well, that very often for campaigns, what we see, and you know, especially for retail, is running, you know, what we do is run the campaigns on multiple channels, and because you never know where you'll, where you hit the magical combination of the targeting, the creative, and you know, the audience, you know, to get the really best performance. The good thing about you know, WeChat Mini Programs is that Tencent, who owns WeChat, has then 4 channels that you can advertise on. So you can already, just with one point of sale, you can already advertise on 4 different channels with quite different, you know, quite different audience, quite different way. Is WeChat WeChat is also on mobile QQ, targeting more younger segment. You also have Tencent News and also Tencent Video. So, and that's, you know, one option. But I think, like you said, Jay, the most important is to start. It's not that much about, okay, which channel to start with. It's about taking the step, starting, and then growing into multiple channels. Any comment now on the end, Jay?
No, actually, not on this one, actually, but I would like to raise this. Look at our previous, let's say, go to watch our previous recording of the previous webinar, which is a very good content as well. Actually, you will find it amazing. And also stay tuned. Yeah, really. I mean, I'm talking about the team. I think I'm very proud that the team is doing this in a very, very nice way. And also stay tuned for the future webinars as well. We're doing it in a regular basis, basically every 2 or 3 weeks. That's we come out with some new topic, with the in-depth insight. We are very proud of our insight here. So
thank you very much for joining.
And thank you for joining.
Thank you, Brad and Julia. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Have a good day and stay safe. Bye.